All right, what's going on, everybody? My name's Dan. Welcome to Hard Knox Talks, the Friday morning freestyle. Today's guest, awakening coach, trauma healer, author, and inspirational speaker Paul Noiles is with me here in the studio to talk to us about his experiences with addiction and how he found his way to where he is today. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning, Daniel. It's wonderful to be here today.
Excellent. Yes, on this cold October morning.
Yes.
Yes.
Big Saskatoon, Saskatchewan.
Yes, sir. Treaty 6 territory.
Wonderful.
How are you feeling today?
Feeling good. It's good. I did a nice meditation this morning to process what it is, what's my intention today.
Mm-hmm.
And my intention is that if whoever's watching, that they'll walk away with the message of self-compassion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And because only when compassion is present are people able to see their truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so self-compassion, people with addictions, we're the best at beating ourselves up. And if we can't be our best friend, we're basically screwed.
Mm-hmm.
And so self-compassion is something that's taken a long time for me to really tag into, and it's been a game changer for me.
Mm-hmm.
And again, only when compassion is present are people able to see their truth. And so That's what I hope people take away from today's session.
All right. Well, without further ado,
this is Hard Knox Talks.
If you are struggling with the substance use of a loved one or have tragically lost a loved one to drug-related harms, reach out to Stronger Together Canada, peer-led support groups by Mums Stop the Harm, and or Naranon groups of Saskatchewan. If you are in search of private inpatient addictions treatment, check out Prairie Sky Recovery Center, located in Leipzig, Saskatchewan. To make contact or to learn more about today's sponsors, check out our new merch, or if you want to show us some love and buy us a coffee, all those links are in the show notes below. So when you touched on meditation there, and I hope we talk about it a little further on, I have recently, over the past couple of months, found breath work, and it changed my life.
Yes.
It has changed my life, and I thought that meditation was hopeless for me. I thought that,
Right.
You know what, the monkey brain wins.
Right.
So, but before we talk more about that, I'm interested to know. I mean, you talked before the show about your 6 key points in your recovery journey. Now, why don't you tell us a little bit about the backstory? Give us a little context as to where you came from.
Well, let's start with this. This is quite interesting. I would say at 6 years old, I was already a person highly susceptible to addiction. I just never found my substance to many years later. You see, because we know this from the research now as unequivocal that all people with addictions have trauma in their past. But not all people who have trauma is going to develop an addiction. But we do know that. And so at 6 years old, from the family of my origin, I was already highly susceptible. And so when I found my substance in my 20s, it was an instant connection because it gave me a lot of positive things. I felt whole. I felt connected. I felt complete, like everything was going to be okay. All my fears slipped away. So why wouldn't I want more of that?
So what was it before that then?
What was what before that?
Well, if you said that your addictive tendencies started at 6 years old, what was it before the substance?
So before the substance, well, the ego mind, total ego, right? The voice that I had back in those days was love me, love me, love me. That was my mantra. Now, I didn't know that's what was playing. And so I was always out to try to seek love outside of myself. And I became good at a whole bunch of things. And, by the time I was 26, 27, I left university and I was in Ottawa and I had a Yellow Page advertising company. And I had 20 employees. I was doing 1.2 million in sales. And by the time I was 35, I was homeless on the streets.
Wow.
Okay, I was homeless in Montreal, Vancouver, Toronto, mostly Toronto. And it was just crazy that I could go from that to that. And that's because of those wounds. And, there's lots of horror stories, when you go from having highly success according to the world, what they think is success.
Yeah.
But inside, the more success I got, the more I felt I didn't deserve it because my deep wound was, I don't deserve it. I'm unworthy. And that's, by the way, what I call mistaken identity.
Yeah.
And we all have mistaken identity, every human being.
Well, and the title I chose was from your website, the Crisis of Consciousness.
Right. Right.
Is that the same thing?
Yes, it is. Yes,
Okay,
it is.
Tell us about that.
Well, the surest solution for recovery from addiction is an awakening of consciousness, or spiritual awakening. And I had a crisis of consciousness. And in that crisis of consciousness was this mistaken identity that I'm not good enough, I'm less than, I'm unlovable, something's wrong with me. And I hid that from everybody. That's called toxic shame. And what do we know about toxic shame? Well, we don't want anyone to know we have toxic shame. And so you think about it like beach balls, and we try to hold them under the water. What happens?
They find a way.
They find a way. They keep popping up, right? Especially when we get angry. And then we keep pushing them down because we don't want nobody to know that my inner wound is that. And that is pain. So let's go to the basics. What is addiction, right? We use because very simply, why do we use? We don't like how we're currently feeling. And we know that the substance or the behavior is going to change how we're feeling. Very simple. Everybody will agree with that. But if we go at a deeper level, we're going to see that really it's the pain of not liking or knowing who we are, which I call mistaken identity. And that mistaken identity is coming from our early childhood experience and this trauma that we all have sustained. And I was in the 12 steps I've been in the 12 steps for like, God, almost 30 years.
That's where I met you.
Yeah. And if I would have stayed with just the 12 steps, I would be dead. I would have blew my brain out.
Yeah.
A long, long, long time ago.
Yeah.
And so, at the core, we got to heal that stuff. There's lots of people with great sobriety and lots of clean time that are still don't like their lives, don't like who they are.
Yeah.
I would say half the people that hire me are 15, 20, 25 years clean and sober.
Yeah.
And they've been working the program.
Yeah.
But they're still not there. That's because it's those wounds.
Yeah.
And we got to get to the wounds and heal it. We got to validate this stuff so that we can get it out of the body. You see, healing doesn't happen in the head.
Oh.
It happens in the body. And what do we always hear, right? Just get over it. Just get over it.
Yeah.
Right. And that, by the way, is terrible when someone says, just get over your early childhood experience or your trauma. Just get over it. Move on.
Before we get too far on in here, I'm interested to know, and with all my guests, I'm interested to know, what was the moment for you? Maybe a little bit about the experience, but I'm interested in the thoughts, because like you didn't just like all of a sudden become, the knowledge holder that you are today. So what was the first thought that brought you into recovery?
I was just the pain. The pain was so great. The pain was so great. And one thing that kept me sick was believing that if I focus all my attention on all the bad things that happened to me, then I'm going to find my recovery. And that's a loop that a lot of people get caught in. In fact, I wrote down all the things that happened to me on a piece of paper and all the things that could happen to me if I used, and I used to carry it around with me, thinking that that's going to help me stay sober. It worked once. That's it. Because if you just focus on all the pain that happens if you use, then that's step one. Then why would we need any other step? That's what's going to keep you clean. Unfortunately, what you focus on expands. And why would I want that to work? That if I just pay attention and all the bad things are going to happen.
Yeah.
Why would I want that to work? Because there's no work involved, is there? Is there?
No. Well, no. I mean, and it's interesting you say it like that, because I was sort of thinking to myself, I could see how that might work, but if we're talking about manifestation and moving forward in life, if I look at all of the bad shit when I already feel bad, let's look at some more bad shit that I did. That's not really going to really keep me sober. That's going to want to drag me back.
Right.
So, yeah.
So maybe I'll just say this, because I think this will cover it up very quickly. We can talk about horror stories and all that. Just very simple. I tried to kill myself twice. I was homeless in, like I said, Vancouver, Montreal, and Toronto. I was beaten within inches of my life. I was beaten with a steel pipe and robbed by two guys in Vancouver. Cracked my head wide open, survived it. I was robbed in Ottawa by 3 guys. One guy had a brick. He hit my face. My whole face collapsed. And I could go, on and on about the amount of how many times I OD'd, the times I ended up in a psych ward, and I could go on and on. But that's not going to help anybody. That's not going to help anybody. But the seat that I'm sitting in here, it's an honest seat.
Well, I like to think so.
And just like you, right?
Yeah,
it's an honest seat, man.
Yeah.
When I'm in the rooms of recovery, my seat, I deserve that seat because I shouldn't be here. I should be dead. And so the first thing is don't give up on yourself. There is no failure unless you give up. And my mistakes made me wiser. My mistakes made me stronger. They almost cost me my life. But my mistakes made me who I am today.
Got a comment coming in. Cora, thanks for the comment. Cora says, this is hitting home for me as I am in the beginning of my journey and trying to get myself to a better place. Welcome, Cora. We are glad you're here today.
Yes, Cora.
So tell us about the first year. Your first year in recovery. What did that look like?
Well, I was in the rooms of recovery. I was known as the king of relapse. I was constantly relapsing.
Nice of them to bestow that title on
you.
you.
Oh yeah, I would relapse all the time.
Yeah,
I get 3 months relapse, 1 month relapse, 11 months relapse, relapse.
What kept taking you back?
Very simple, toxic shame. Toxic shame. I'm telling you, most people, for everyone out there who is in a relapsing cycle all the time, I guarantee you the reason for your relapse is toxic shame. And that voice of toxic shame is living in your subconscious mind, not your conscious mind. And you don't want nobody to know it. And if you don't look at it and deal with it, the only way to deal with shame is it got to be shared. And you got to be vulnerable. You got to get honest with yourself. But it's living in the subconscious. And what do we know about the subconscious mind? It's 1,000,000 times stronger than the conscious mind. People don't understand that. So the subconscious mind operates at 40 million bits per second. The conscious mind operates at what? What do you think?
I have no idea. I never even considered.
40 bits per second.
Wow.
That's how you get 1,000,000 times. Scientists know this. That's why, we could read the best book ever written by the top 10 addiction people of all time. And get 100% on the test, and we go back relapsing because consciousness can't fix this. We'd all just read a great book. We'd all be fit. We'd all be healthy. We just read a book about anything we wanted to change, and consciousness would do it. But unfortunately, we got the subconscious mind that's saying, yeah, you don't deserve that. I call it addict man. Addict man's on your shoulder.
He's got a cape.
And let me tell you something. By recognizing addict man as opposed to you, that you're not your addiction. Yes, in the rooms we go, hi, I'm Paul. I'm a recovering person from an addiction, right?
Yeah.
But in the end, I'm not my addiction either. And so by recognizing there's this addict man on my shoulder or addict woman on my shoulder, and he's constantly talking to me, especially in early recovery. Oh, Paul, it's been a rough day.
Yeah, you could probably just do it once. You've been good.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we got to take that. If you make it an enemy, addict man, you're going to keep it. What you resist will persist. So you got to make friends with addict man, and you got to let him go off your shoulder. Why do we want to make friends with addict man? It's very simple. This is a Gabor Mate approach to healing addiction. The first thing you do with someone, and I do it with all my clients, here it is. I want you to tell me all the positive things that your addiction gave you in the beginning.
That must catch people off guard.
It does.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's vital. Here's why. It's vital. Remember when I told you that the first time I did my substance of choice, I felt whole. I felt connected, safe, and like everything was going to be okay, and my fears slipped away.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I want more of that?
Yeah.
I was looking for a real solution to real life problems, wasn't I?
Of course.
Is there anything to be ashamed of in that?
I would think not.
Right. And guess what? The opposite of all that has everything that happened to me as a little person going on. Why did I not feel safe? Why did I not feel connected? Why did I have to have a substance to feel whole and complete?
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, one of the words for trauma is disconnection. We're disconnected from our authentic self.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't I want to continue doing this?
Yeah.
And if you know, do you know Deepak Chopra?
I mean, I don't know him,
But you know who he is,
Yeah.
right? He's very famous.
Yeah.
I love his definition of a person with an addiction. Guess what he says? You're going to love this.
Tell me.
All he is a misguided seeker.
A misguided seeker?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
He's seeking the wrong places,
Mm-hmm.
but he's going after something very big and important.
Well, and I say this often, but it wanting to feel better is not an addiction thing.
That's
it's a
right.
human condition
That's
thing.
right. That's right.
So that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, misguided seeker.
Yeah. So early in recovery, you're going out, you're relapsing away.
Yes.
People are calling you out on it. Tell us about the time when that changed.
Thank God that I had, I have the same mentor for 30 years, almost 30 years. And everybody else was seeing this person who's relapsing.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, he's done. It's all over for him.
He's not doing the work.
Right. But see, my mentor seen all the hard work that I was doing. I never stopped working on me. Never. I was always coming right back into recovery. I never gave up. And so things were happening. See, we don't know what's being done in the spiritual realm. We just think we do when we see anybody. We have no idea what's being worked out. And sometimes it's ugly as you know what.
Yeah, it is.
And because she's a very awake woman, she's a retired minister herself, Centers of Spiritual Living, Lorraine. And now people always say, what do you mean you got a female? By the way, she's, you know, she's an ordained minister who is a lesbian. And so there is
None of that shit should matter.
It shouldn't matter, but people,
Yeah.
this is the way people are.
I
It should
know.
matter. She's
I
the
know.
most important person. And if it wasn't for her, who still believed in me and was my guide, I would probably wouldn't have made it.
Mm-hmm.
So, that, and then it just came to a point. I kept doing the work. And eventually I woke up to my true essence.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, it was like 2 months later, geez, I haven't had a thought of using. This is weird.
Mm-hmm.
A few months later, oh my God, I haven't had a thought of using. And now it's been almost 10 years. And still, because I had an awakening of consciousness. You see, the old me, that little boy who thought he wasn't good enough and unlovable, that person died. He was healed and died. And I risen and woke up to my true essence. You see, Eckhart Tolle, I'm sure you know who Eckhart Tolle is, right? What does he say? He says our true essence is this being of love.
Yes.
It's an essence, our being of love. And that's what I woke up to. So think about, there's an onion. Notice it's an onion?
I noticed, yeah.
And what do onions do? They make us cry because it's very painful work to peel your onion.
Yeah.
So we got to peel. See, the only way you can know who you are is by knowing who you're not. It's the only way you can know. You got to peel this onion. I am not my fears. I am not my thoughts. I am not even my feelings, which I believed all my life. That if I was feeling any negative feeling, I must be that. And you peel away. And what happens to the onion, it disappears. And you wake up to your essence. But it's difficult work. Because what we're doing is we're peeling away the false self, the mistaken identity.
Yeah. And it doesn't want to die.
And it doesn't want to die.
Yeah.
So it sure doesn't want to die.
Yeah. I mean, I'm 6.5 years into my journey,
Yes.
and I'm still peeling it
Yes,
back.
yes.
And and
Yes.
through alternative means as well. Like
Yeah.
you know me, in the beginning
Yeah.
when we met, I was very much a staunch 12-step recovery person, and that
Yeah.
certainly has changed. And we'll talk about that in a bit.
Yeah. And so we got to peel that onion. Now, the interesting thing is, we can never fully know who we are. Okay? We can never fully know, but we can get damn close enough to experience this God essence, what I call love, that resides within all of us. And the reason we cannot fully know who we are is because it's the same thing as, you can't chew your own jawbone, can you? Fire can't burn itself, because we can never fully know who we are. And that's okay. But we can get damn close enough for that old self to be gone, and we arise to our true essence that's been there all along. My statement, all is well with our souls, even when we think not. Because at the core, it's there. It's always been there.
Do we ever run away from that wellness?
What do you mean by run away?
For me, like, sometimes to this day, I will retreat back into what's comfortable. The wellness, it's just like, it's too much. It's too foreign. Do you ever see that in people running back to the old thoughts, running back to the old resentments? And why do you suppose that is?
Because it's patterns. It's patterns. And especially these patterns are old. Old.
But if
ancient.
What piqued my curiosity there is, you said the spirit always, how did you say it again?
Our true essence.
Okay.
There's true essence in everybody.
Yeah.
So look at it this way. There's almost 7 billion people in the world. Guess what? Would you agree with me? There's 7 billion, 100% spiritual people in the world.
I mean, I couldn't really argue with it.
Are we spiritual beings?
Yes.
At the core.
That we are, yes.
We're 100% spiritual beings, every one of us.
Yeah.
So at our core, we're all 100% spiritual beings. The only difference is, of any two moments, like even us right now, you and me, one of us could be more connected to our 100% spiritual beingness at this time. Is that correct?
I would say, yeah.
Yes. And so we're the blockers to our light. We block it. That's all it is. You see, there's nothing to fix and there's nothing to change really at a depth level in anybody. It's only to awaken to. We're the blockers. So we got to find out everything that's blocking us from this great divine light that resides through all of us.
Yeah.
And that, the 12 steps is all about that, really. You do all these steps, so we have what? A spiritual awakening.
Yeah, that's the hope.
Right.
Yeah.
And what are we waking up to? What are we waking up to? That. We're waking up to our spiritual essence.
Yeah.
That great love. Right?
So how did your life change? When you had this awakening, you noticed that you weren't relapsing anymore.
Yeah.
How did your life change? Like, what did your practices look like?
I was practicing all along. Again, you're making a really good point here. You see, if you're not willing to change your daily routine, you're not going to change.
Yeah.
So I've been doing this for almost 15 years. I wake up just before I came here, I do prayer, meditation, and gratitude.
Yeah.
Now, meditation is, like you said, you hated it. It's tough for everybody.
It's not that I hated it. I hated that I couldn't achieve what I thought it should be.
Right. So
I thought I'm the blocker.
Right. So you had expectations.
Oh yeah. Oh, I still do, on all kinds of things that I wish I didn't.
Right.
If Dawn is watching right now, she's probably chuckling.
So here's an important thing. Okay, let's come right back to the basics here. Again, is we people with addictions, when you really process it at the core, we use because we don't currently like how we're feeling. We know the substance is going to change how they're feeling.
We want to feel better.
Now, at a deeper level, is that we turn it into identity. That if we're having these low vibration, you notice I don't say negative feelings, because if you say it's a negative feeling like sadness and shame, guess what? If you say you're going to turn it into identity and you're going to suffer more. Because you now believe your feelings are who you are. Let me ask you something.
And that you're bad.
Are we our feelings? Is there any permanence in feelings?
No.
Is there any permanence in thoughts?
No.
Then are we the mind?
No.
Right. However, if you just know that as a mind construct, that you're not the mind, which most people will agree with you, it will never serve you until you can experience it. Till you know it personally. Until
you can observe it. And I learned that in my first sitting, when I first sat with medicine. It was very much, there was a separation between the things that I was feeling and the reactions I was having to those feelings. And I was observing them from the outside. so that I could see it now instead of just being it. I could see it from the outside. And that was a big revelation for me.
I'm sure you heard the statement that the longest journey is from the head to the heart.
Yes, the red road.
Right. Okay. And so in the practice of your daily practice of meditation and gratitude and that, especially meditation, it's here that you are going to finally know that you're actually not those thoughts and that you're not those feelings, that there actually is no permanence, that the real you is beyond them. And when you know that, that's a game changer. Because why do we continue to use this? Because we're believing we are this feeling. We are the thoughts connected to the feeling. And if you come to this realization that, oh my God, that's not true, it can be a big aha moment. By the way, that's one of my 6. Remember I said to you, I had at the beginning, I had 6 critical things on my journey of recovery.
What number was that?
That was number 5. I'm not the mind.
So now we need to go back.
The first one is vital.
Tell us about it.
And I'm sure as soon as I say it, you go, oh my God, yes, I get it.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the victim mode.
Yes.
Okay. If we're in the victim mode, nobody can help us.
Yes.
And here's the thing. This was a pivotal, by the way, this didn't happen until the beginning of my 2nd year of recovery, that this pivotal moment happened. And I was actually teaching a meditation class at a treatment center. And I came out of it and I was sitting all by myself. I was working at a rural recovery center outside Gimli, Manitoba. And I worked there. I was the director. And something hit me all at once. It was that nobody was coming to save me because it's no one's job to save me but my own. I realized for 20 years, I've been waiting for my father to come on his white shiny horse to save his son. And he rejected me. When I told him I had an addiction, that was it. He stopped talking to me for 20 years. And my mentor's not going to save me, my sponsor. I had to make a decision deep within me that I was worth saving and that no one was coming because I was in the victim mode for a long, long time. Yeah. And at that moment, when I recognized no one's coming, I cried profusely. I remember that moment. It was one of those aha moments. I cried like a little baby from the inside out, that I realized for the first time that I'm going to take 100% responsibility for my recovery.
Were those tears, was that fear or was that relief or gratitude?
It was a complete relief because I knew that was the truth. You see, staying in the victim mode, we're not thinking clearly. We're not being real. We're not in realistic life. We're in the victim mode. How do you know if you're in the victim mode, by the way? What's the quickest way to know you're in the victim mode?
Well, I can't say I know that.
Blame.
Okay. Well,
whenever we blame.
Simple now that you say it out loud.
Yeah. When we're blaming other people for our recovery, for our relapses, for anything.
For the way we feel.
Our emotional content.
Yeah.
You made me feel.
Yeah.
You made me feel.
Yeah.
Nobody makes us feel. They're all not that powerful. It all happens from within us. It happens from within us. And guess what? If we have this trauma, these wounds, are we really seeing what is? No, we're not, right? There's that famous statement, we don't respond to what is happening. We respond to our perceptions of what is happening. And our perceptions are usually clouded by our trauma past, our unhealed past. In my book, and I know I don't want to mention my book during this session much, but there is a quote. The quote of all quotes that I get at least once a month from somebody around the globe that's read my book. And here it is. We spend our childhood wanting to grow up as fast as possible. And then we spend our adulthood trying to undo our childhood without knowing it. And so we're reacting from our perceptions. And we have to come out of the victim mode first so that we can take full responsibility for our lives. And that's why I had a profuse crying. Buddy, at the end of the crying, I felt a relief.
Yeah.
Because I knew that it's in my hands.
Yeah.
And
There's
I can
hope.
do it.
Yeah.
Let's look at one of the biggest definitions that people say about trauma. Trauma is not about it's never about the event of what happens to us.
Yeah.
Okay? It's never about that. It's about what it does to us eternally.
Eternally?
Eternally.
Okay.
I'm not good enough. So it's not about the actual physical violence or whatever that was done to us, the trauma event. It's about what it does to us eternally. We throw out our authenticity. We believe there's something wrong with us, and we have this stuff that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but that's not a bad thing. Here's why.
Internally?
Yes,
Or
internally.
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 Okay. Yeah.
The voice.
Eternally is like.
Yeah, internally. So it's not about the actual event. It's
Yeah.
about what it does to us internally.
Okay.
Okay, and so that's a good thing. Here's why. Because if it happens, if it's happening to us internally, we can heal that, can't we?
That's the hope.
So we're powerful. We're not a victim of it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
We're not a victim
Mm-hmm.
because it happens to us eternally. All the wounds are there, and we can deal with that. We can heal that, and we need to get help with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're not a victim. We're actually powerful.
Yes. So what did it look like? You had this big release, big realization.
Yeah.
What next?
Next,
What was the first action?
Okay. Well, just that big aha moment, your life just changed when you have a big aha moment like that about taking responsibility. And so the next critical moment on my journey was the compassion piece, unconditional self-acceptance. Like, we all have to come to a point that every one of us has good, bad, and ugly in us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? We got to have unconditional self-acceptance. No matter what happens, I made a decision. I'll never forget that decision, that I'm done beating myself up. I'm going to choose unconditional self-acceptance no matter what. No matter how much I think I failed, no matter what goes on, I'm choosing me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be authentic. I'm going to choose me and the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a pivotal moment. If we can't be our best friend, we're screwed. And all of us in recovery, we have that thing where we all beat ourselves up and we do it to ourselves nonstop.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's what we're doing, what are we programming about ourselves?
Mm-hmm.
That we're not good enough and
we can't
unlovable and can't do it.
Yeah.
Something must be wrong with us.
Yeah.
And so if that voice is continuing, you still wiring it.
Mm-hmm. You know, I had a revelation just the other day, actually. And it was about, am I doing good enough? Am I working hard enough?
Right.
Am I doing all the right things on social media and all of the other things?
Yes.
And then I realized there is only one person that shows up for me every morning when I wake up with coffee, ready to go.
Right.
Who's that one person?
Right. It's you.
It's me.
Yeah.
I'm here. You know,
Right.
I'm always, no one's here for me or whatever. And I don't think that very often, but as an example,
Right.
you know, but there is, there
Right.
always is.
Right. And if you would say, who's not here for me?
Yeah.
What mode is that?
That's the victim
You
mode.
bet it.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah. So,
The victim mode, by the way, everybody can go in the victim mode, and it's just something to be aware of. And the best way to keep the victim mode is whenever you go into blame or blaming someone for your feelings, know that you're in the victim mode, and it ain't ever going to serve you.
and that's hard sometimes.
Yes, it is. Very hard.
And especially when we're talking about being in a relationship, say like you're husband and wife or whatever.
Yes.
And one of you says something that triggers the other one.
Right.
Right. And now you want to, like, why would you say that? You know, like, you know how I feel, whatever, you know?
Right.
And like, I don't know, what would you say to someone who's living in that right
Okay.
now?
Well, my goodness, didn't you just bring up the seventh spiritual moments that are important to my journey? And by the way, this is not just me. This is Gabor Mate's important teaching, and it's about triggers.
Mm-hmm.
So let's understand about a trigger, okay?
Let's, please.
So let's think of a gun.
Mm-hmm.
And the smallest part of the gun is what? The trigger.
Hammer. Trigger.
It's the smallest part.
Okay.
See, the trigger is not important. And a lot of us say, well, he triggered me. No, he didn't trigger you, or she didn't trigger you. The trigger it's already in you. That's your wound. It's not them. It's you. It's your, so there's the trigger is the smallest part. It's the explosive powder that makes the gun go boom. That's what we got to look at.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the trigger is.
Mm-hmm.
So in actuality, when we have a trigger, guess what happens? The mind will go to the worst scenario instantaneously.
Oh,
And you have no
truth.
And you have no control over that. So the first thing is you're going to be able to have compassion by knowing that when you get triggered, you just went to the worst scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got to go, okay, what is the worst scenario? And it's always about ourselves. It always triggers something like, I'm not good enough. She thinks I'm stupid. That means I must think I'm stupid, but it's usually about ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go defensive.
Mm-hmm.
So why do you go defensive? What's that all about?
Mm-hmm.
And if I was working with you, I guarantee you, Daniel,
Mm-hmm.
I'd have you back at like 6, 7 years of age, and you would see where the wound began. And
Yeah.
I would heal it at that place.
Yeah.
And guess what will happen? Now you're going to have great compassion for yourself because you're seeing that that's where it happened. And if that's where it happened, was it your fault?
Yeah.
No, it wasn't, because you had to hold the attachment. So triggers have the answer to our healing. And I just would like to read something for everybody.
Yeah, by all means.
And this is from Gabor Mate's course, the year course I took with him.
Mm-hmm.
And here's what it says: triggers and holes. You're going to love this because I know you're on the
excited.
journey of awakening. Your conflicts, all the difficult things, the traumatic situations in your life are not chance and haphazard. They are actually yours. They are specifically yours, designed specifically for that part of you that loves you more than anything else. That part of you loves you more than anything else has created roadblocks to lead you to yourself. That part of you loves you so much that it doesn't want you to lose the chance. It will go to extreme measures to wake you up. It will make you suffer greatly if you don't listen. What else can it do? That is its purpose. That's what a trigger is.
Mm-hmm.
It gets to the core. It gets to the core.
So tell me, we talked about the first pivotal moment, and then we talked about, I believe, the 5th, 6th, and 7th.
Yeah.
What did number 2 look like?
That was the compassion. So we got right now we talked about the victim. We talked about the unconditional self-acceptance. We talked about triggers, and we talked about the mind, right? That I'm not the mind, meaning thoughts and feelings. Okay. And the other one is the compassion piece. I don't know what it was. It was like probably 8 years ago. And I was really, really studying the Dalai Lama at this time, majorly.
Mm-hmm.
And the Dalai Lama, everything I read, and if you ever read anything by the Dalai Lama, he only talks about one thing all the time, compassion, compassion, compassion. And at this time, I was like, compassion, that sounds so Pollyanna. Compassion, right? I'm a man, right?
Yeah.
Right? And there I am. I go to a doctor's office. I swear, this is like it was following me. I'm at a doctor's office. There's a magazine. I'm waiting to see a doctor. I open it up. There's the Dalai Lama. He's talking about compassion. I come home. I turn on the TV. There's the Dalai Lama. He's talking about compassion. And he kept on talking and he didn't shut up. And something hit me, Daniel, all at once. Why does the Dalai Lama talk about compassion all the time? And it just hit me. Because if you can't have compassion for yourself and others, you're screwed. You are absolutely screwed.
Mm-hmm.
And at that moment, I made that decision. I'm practicing it. And I thought it was going to be easy. Guess what? It's the most difficult thing in the world.
Yeah.
To practice self-compassion and compassion for others. Because it brings up everything in you.
It does. Yeah, 100%.
Right. So that was the other pivotal moment. And then the other one, and I'm sure you can relate to this, and that's vulnerability.
Mm-hmm. You know, I've always thought that I was good at vulnerability. Like right from the very beginning, I came into the rooms and I would just barf everything all over Facebook. And I thought that's what being vulnerable was.
Right.
And maybe it is. Maybe it is. But I'm learning more now that my vulnerability is it's beyond being honest to everyone. You know what I mean? Like I'm always trying to formulate the most poetic ways to say what's in my head and put that layer of armor on it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. So yeah, that type of vulnerability is actually not vulnerability, and it can hurt you when you just go and do that to everybody on Facebook.
Yeah.
Because that's not compassion for yourself.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what these other people are going to respond back or anything.
Mhm.
So you got to learn vulnerability with one or two people. Because if you do it that way, that's not vulnerability.
Mm.
And Brené Brown, I'm sure you know who
I
Brené
do,
Brown is. She'll
Yeah.
talk about that piece.
So if it's not compassion, or if it's not
That- well-
vulnerability, then what is it?
Well, why would you think about the danger of doing something like that?
Mhm.
Just being out to everybody.
Yeah.
That's dangerous.
Yeah.
By the way, can you see how boundaryless that is?
Yes.
Right. So what do we know about people with addictions are we not the most boundaryless people in the world?
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
Okay. So learning boundaries is important for us to learn, because if we have boundaries, that means we are learning to love ourselves and respect ourselves. So here's a little thing that I do with clients that I learned again from Gabor Mate. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that space that you have right now, say that that's your life space and you can't move from it right now. You're not allowed to move from it.
From right here.
Yeah, from right there.
Okay.
And now,
I almost don't. Right here, actually.
now I come in front of you,
Okay.
almost an inch from your nose.
Yeah.
And it makes you very uncomfortable because I'm now in your space, right? What are you going to do?
I'm going to try to move, or
No, you can't move. I just said you can't move.
I'm going to push.
Right. You're going to push. Guess
Yeah.
what that's called?
What's that?
Healthy anger.
Oh.
And what is healthy anger? It shows our boundaries. It shows our boundaries. So let's talk about the 5 A's of healing.
Let's.
Gabor Mate's 5 A's of healing. What do you think? Give me an A
An A?
out of the 5 A's of healing.
Man, you're calling me right out. Acceptance.
Wow, you hit one. See?
Uh-huh.
What else? You think of another one?
Oh, accountability.
No.
No.
So
Mm.
awareness.
Mm.
Here's the next one. Authenticity.
Mm.
The next one is called agency. What agency means is we have to take responsibility for our own healing.
Mm-hmm.
And then acceptance, which you said.
Mm-hmm.
And the fifth one, here it is, brother, healthy anger.
Mm.
Now, the research is unequivocal. In Gabor Mate's new book, The Myth of Normal, which is a New York Times bestseller right now, there is study after study that shows all these autoimmune diseases and people who are getting sick with bowel syndrome stuff and all that stuff. They're usually the people pleasers. They're the people who get very sick and ill, and we say, oh my God, they're the kindest, most amazing people in the world. That's not the truth. The truth is they're people pleasers. They can't say no, and they don't know how to express their healthy anger.
Mm.
And they get really sick because our issues live in our tissues of our body. And when we suppress anything, we get ill.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are the 5 A's. The 5 A's.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
I'll go over them again, maybe. Awareness, authenticity, agency, taking responsibility for our own healing, acceptance, and healthy anger. Now, healthy anger, think about it. I'm just going to use my own life story,
Of course.
and this will talk about my childhood experience. I could not be angry because if I was angry, I could get hurt by my father.
Mm.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
It was too dangerous because I always felt fear around my father. So I was always in a trauma response. And so I developed ways to deal with that. One of them would be people pleasing, right? So we have fight, freeze, and fawn. Fawn is people pleasing. That's a trauma response.
Mm-hmm.
And so I couldn't be angry. And so what did I learn? To suppress my anger. My dad was very angry, rageful.
Mm-hmm.
I said to myself very early on, I don't want to be like my father. So what did I do? I learned to suppress it.
Mm-hmm.
So it took me a long time to realize and to pay attention to my anger, because I wouldn't pay attention, and then it grows and grows, and then I react.
Yeah.
And now I'm just like my father.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the very thing that I said I didn't want to be.
So tell us more about, I don't think we've covered all your pivotal points yet. I think there's still a few left. In there.
We said the victim mode.
Yep.
We said compassion,
Yep.
unconditional self-acceptance, Oh, the one,
Yeah.
yeah. And we said we're not the mind and triggers. The final one is the vulnerability piece.
Mm.
The vulnerability piece is so difficult, especially for us men.
And one that I thought that I had achieved very early. I thought, just like I
Right.
said, barfing all over Facebook, all of my trauma.
Right. Right. I did the same thing at the beginning too.
Yeah, so many do. And
That's
then
right.
and then I thought I was going to be an
Right.
addictions counselor.
And so, I was born an HSP. Ever heard of that? HSP, a highly sensitive person. And for everybody listening, go Google highly sensitive person. By the way, they discovered in the 70s that 15% of the population is born highly sensitive people. There's even a movie you can watch called Highly Sensitive People with Alanis Morissette in it. Now, 15% of the population is born highly sensitive. Guess what I got when I was a little boy all the time? Paul, you're so sensitive. Paul, you're so sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
So I would hide that, right? Because I had shame.
Mm-hmm.
And I had bright red hair and freckles.
Uh-huh.
And everyone's calling me highly sensitive because I was. And when I discovered that I was a highly sensitive person, guess what happened? I have compassion for myself. And by the way, today, my highly sensitive person is one of my greatest gifts. By the way, if you look at people in addictions, what do we have? We have all our creative people, our musicians, our artists, our singers, our writers, the work that you do. I guarantee you might even be an HSP if you really did this.
I have diagnosed myself.
Yes.
I am convinced. Yes, I am very highly sensitive.
So
to many
know
things.
that is 15% of the population. The doctor discovered that. They did the research on it, and it's highly sensitive person in HSP. And so when I discovered that was very important for me to have compassion. And and as a little boy, we're told as men, right? We got to be tough. We got to be tough. Can't be vulnerable.
Yep.
And so I'd be in recovery, and I'd be continue to relapsing, but I still wasn't being vulnerable. I wasn't really letting them in. I wasn't letting them into the hurt little boy, the adult me who still thinks he's not enough, who thinks he's going to be alone and no one's going to ever love him. And until I was able to get vulnerable and share that with someone that I could trust. And guess what happened when I began to find people that I could share that with? Something magical happens. I thought they would reject me if I got vulnerable and shared that. The complete opposite happens when we get vulnerable. The other person goes, oh my God, I got those same things going on. And I'm going, what? Really? And they're listening to you? And they're engaging with you? All of a sudden, you discover the most powerful thing in the universe, which is vulnerability. It's vulnerability. And that was a missing piece for a great majority of my recovery.
Yeah.
I would share what I thought was being vulnerable, but I wasn't there because the fearful little boy was so scared that he's unlovable.
So how has that relationship changed? Now, let's talk inner child stuff for a moment.
By the way, that's my book I'm writing right now. My second book is all an inner child book.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah.
I'm just starting to touch on that now. And my mom, bless her, she was an addictions counselor for 40 years here. And I started telling her, I'm starting to do some inner child stuff. And she's like, yeah, 5-6 years, it's about right. So here we are. But tell us a little bit about your experience with that when you realized that there could be a dialogue there, and what did that dialogue sound like? Yeah.
Well, first, when you recognize that most of your shame, everybody with addiction has shame. It's the basis, the solid foundation is based in shame. Okay. What does Brené Brown say about shame? It's very interesting. She says when shame is involved, everything else is secondary. The great John Bradshaw, I call him the godfather of shame. He says, toxic shame is soul murder. Soul murder. So when I began to recognize the voice of not good enough, I'm unlovable, something's wrong with me, all that,
Mm-hmm.
is you recognize that it's adult you, who still thinks he's a little boy. And he still has to hold attachment to whoever he's in a relationship with.
Mm-hmm.
And in that process, what he does is he throws out his authenticity. You see, that's what happens when we have trauma in early childhood. No matter what it is, we will hold the attachment with our caretakers, mom and dad for most people, and we'll always throw out our authenticity, whatever's going on. Okay? For instance, when my dad would come home drunk, I would hide under my bed.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes he would go, because he liked to play with me when he was drunk. And he'd find me under my bed. And I remember this one time he pulled me into the living room. And he took my baby finger and he squeezed it like that. And he said, say uncle. Say uncle. So I'm in the living room. My mom is watching. And I'm jumping around the living room screaming because he's drunk. He's going to break my finger.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't know how hard he's doing it. And I'm crying, yelling uncle. And he releases it because he's drunk. What does he do? He laughs at me crying.
Mm.
By the way, that's called humiliation. Humiliation is different than shame. Shame is I'm the bad person. Humiliation is you know that what the person did to you was wrong. And they did it anyways.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, the research shows people that humiliation, deep humiliation, they're some of the most ruthless people in the world. They end up being the killers and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Humiliation is big, man.
Yeah.
So that little boy, he has to hold the attachment with mom and dad. It's
Mm-hmm.
survival.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd have to throw out my authenticity and believe that I deserved it and that something's wrong with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I must be, right, not good enough. I'm not doing things enough, whatever. The child will always do that. Always.
Yeah. You know, moving forward now, and I know I touched it on a little bit on the beginning, and I said we would come back to it.
Yeah.
I've been having experiences with plant medicines.
Yes.
Wonderful experiences.
Good for you.
Yes. Powerful. Not, I didn't go for the light show. You know what I mean? I went to learn some things about myself and to figure out why everything we talked about today, you know, triggers and the victim mentality, all of the things. And something that stood out to me for what you were just talking about, I just came back from ceremony on Tuesday of this week. So, and one of the things I experienced is when I was in medicine, when I was sitting, something came to me, took my power
Mm-hmm.
from my mother and gave it back to me.
Yes. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I told my
Wow.
mom that, and she's like, that's really interesting.
Right.
So
Yeah, that sounds like a very healing moment for you.
Mm-hmm. So when you're talking about hanging on to the caregivers and stuff
Right,
like that,
right.
that really piqued that for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people have codependency, deep codependency from their trauma, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we become people pleasers and we can't say no. And we don't realize it's just because we have the fear that we are unlovable or whatever it is, the disconnection.
Mm-hmm.
And so that fear overrides everything. That fear overrides everything, right? And so it's just sad, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's how we survived.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we survived. It's survival.
Yeah.
It's not our fault, is it? That I had to believe it was partly my fault. And see, the second trauma, there's a second trauma there. Think about it. My mom watched it, right?
Mm-hmm.
By the way, I love my mom and dad.
Yeah.
They're amazing. This ain't about blaming parents at all.
Mm-hmm.
I've done a lot of healing with both of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm okay with it all. My dad even read my book, and my dad never said he loved me my entire life until 2 years ago. And he said to me on the phone, I'm so proud of you. I actually looked at your book and your website, and I see all the people you're helping. And for the first time, he said, I love you, son.
Mm. How'd that feel?
It was amazing.
Wasn't weird?
Yeah, it was. It was.
Mhm.
I always told him I loved him. And that was quite a moment.
Mm-hmm.
So the second trauma is this. You see, I just had that experience with my father. And now I go to my mother and asking her to help me. And my mother has her own fear and her own codependency. She grew up with 2 alcoholic parents.
Mm-hmm.
And when I asked her, she just said, "Oh, your dad loves you. He works hard and he's just drinking."
Mm.
So what do you think in that experience with my mother, what I have to believe about what would I have to do with my authenticity again?
It's secondary.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, I don't matter would be the voice. I asked for help. She says,
No.
basically. And then I would go to, I must not matter. I must not be worthy enough.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see how that would hurt a little boy?
Yeah.
Can you see now that when I say to you at the beginning of our session, I said at 6 years old, I was highly sensitive to addiction. I just never found my substance till many years later.
Mm-hmm.
That was the susceptibility. So we know this. Alcohol doesn't make an alcoholic. Cocaine doesn't make a cocaine addict. Food doesn't make a food addict. Gambler doesn't make a gambling addict. We have to be susceptible to addiction in the first place.
Mm.
Now, and the susceptibility is usually coming from our traumatic experience, and it's usually early in life where the program is downloaded when we're very small.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I got a question for you.
Mm.
This is an important question. And you'll see why very quickly. How much brain development does a little baby have at birth?
How much brain development?
Mm-hmm. So let's look at it this way.
Yeah.
In the animal kingdom, when a giraffe is born, a horse is born, a hippopotamus is born, do you know that they get up and walk almost immediately? Mm-hmm. That's because they have 100% brain development at birth.
Well, and I know that the human brain doesn't fully develop until into your 20s.
That's right. So how much brain development at birth?
I don't really know.
25%.
Wow.
About 25%.
Yeah.
Why is that? Very simple. If our brains were any bigger, moms would die. Moms would die. The pain of delivery would be impossible. Mm-hmm. We had fully developed brains that would be all over, okay?
Yeah.
So it's biological. Now,
Yeah.
here's the thing. Listen to this. From birth, it's 25%. The first 3 years, almost 2.5 to 3, it goes from 25% to 90%. The most growth is from 0 to around 2.5, 3. Mm-hmm. The final 10% is mostly prefrontal cortex. Mm-hmm. And that goes right up until in the 20s.
Yeah.
Now, if there's any stress in the environment, say you're in mommy's belly even, this is called in utero trauma. Mm-hmm. And one daddy's an alcoholic and he's always fighting with mommy. The mommy's in major stress, right? Mm-hmm. The baby gets it all. Mm-hmm. Now the baby's born and it's still going on. The baby's in a stressful environment. It stops the important wiring for emotional connection and bonding. Mm. Now, it's a big problem because it happens before 3. So remember the brain development I talked about? Yeah. There's a brain development that happens at around 2.5. There's an area in the brain that gets formed for memory. That's why we don't have any memories before 2.5 usually. Mm-hmm. There's no memory because the area in the brain is not formed yet. So that means what the baby has is called a pain body from the stress. It has all this fear. It has all this sadness. It's all in the body of the baby. Mm-hmm. And they come out of the, and now that in the first 3 years, it's all there, constriction and everything. And there's the beginnings of the mistaken identity. Mm-hmm. Mm.
Where can people?
And that's why Gabor Mate, he says, by the way, you can watch a video, you can Google it, why the first 3 years of life is so important.
Yeah.
And he'll talk all about that.
Yeah. I've listened to some of that stuff and like, as a parent, it definitely layers some guilt on.
Right. Right. Which I'm going to help you a little bit here.
Oh, good.
I think it'll help you. So there's a quote in my book, and there's a section about family and addiction. Mm-hmm. Since you just brought up family, what a perfect segue. Here it is. I cannot stress enough the importance of parents do the vital work of letting go of their guilt and shame for the things they did or didn't do with their children. Why? Because nobody wants to be someone else's failure. As long as parents carry guilt and shame for their kids, they see their failures every time they look at them. who wants to be someone else's failure?
That is beautiful.
Right.
Well written. my
And
friend.
so that is your journey to heal that, so that you don't pass that on. Because we're energy people, and they'll feel that,
Yeah.
right?
Where can people find your book? Where can people reach out to you, learn more about your coaching?
My book is, go to my website, paulnoiles.com. There's a whole section on my book. And then there's...
What's it called?
It's called The Mistaken Identity, A Sacred Journey from Addiction to Awakening. It took me almost 3 years to write, my friend.
Please buy it.
And then to get the guts to publish it.
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful book with my story intertwined with teachings and everything else on the journey. It's been well received, all 5-star reviews, and it's beautiful because the sales keep increasing, and I love that. My goodness, everybody, if there's the message again that I want to leave with, self-compassion, and to heal that little person, and to do the healing work, because I kept on relapsing, did the steps many times, kept on relapsing. Nothing wrong with the steps. It was an important part of my journey, but most of us need more than just that. We all come from trauma. That's just the way it is. And if you really want to up your game, and if you're relapsing all the time, please know that it is toxic shame. Probably that is the reason you keep on relapsing.
Yeah. People can learn about your coaching on your website.
Yes, everything is there.
Okay.
And
You on Facebook?
on Facebook, yep, Paul Noiles.
Okay.
Yeah, on Instagram, I'm pretty well everywhere,
Awesome.
like yourself.
Yes,
We're both online people.
Yeah. Oh, there's Paul again.
There's Daniel again.
Yeah. Oh, I'm here too.
And here's the funniest part that people don't know, but we didn't even know. Daniel, by the way, he lives 30-second drive to get here to his place from my place, which is, we didn't even know that, right?
Yeah.
It was great. What a small world we live in.
Yeah.
What a small world we live in.
Yes, sir.
And again, the most important question, people, is who am I? Who am I? And we got to peel that onion, because the only way to know who you are is by knowing who you're not. And we're not our fears. We're not our past. We're not the trauma. We're not the fear. We're not the feelings. We're not the thoughts. We're not the mind. And what you're left with is an awakening of consciousness, where the consciousness that has feelings, that has thoughts, that's what we really are. Awakening consciousness with this divine energy that I call love. And when I woke up to that, my whole life changed. But my God, is it a painful work to dissect the false self, the mistaken identity. It's the most painful and the most important work on our journey, because we wake up to our authentic self. And now all the gifts that this God creator has given us, or you call it love or whatever it is, it can now be expressed and given to the world. Just like you're doing right now with your Hard Knox Talks. You've woken up to your authenticity, and you went through the fears, and here you are being authentic and doing what you want to do. Find out what you love and do more of that.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us today, Paul. Very much appreciate your journey and your willingness to share it with us and what you've learned along the way. And we'll let you go. Take care, my friend.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. If you got anything out of this episode today, please hit that like button at the bottom of the screen. If you're not yet subscribed, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we go live every Friday morning, every Sunday evening. We got lots of content for you to watch in between. And that's it for today, everyone. Have a